Hi, I am making this video to show you some of the basics of PWGL. On the screen right now you see a URL to where you can download PWGL and find more information about it. PWGL is an object-oriented graphical interface to programming for musical purposes, which I would generally term computer-assisted composition. We'll talk more about that in another time. Today I really want to just open up PWGL and take a look around inside and talk about the basics of how it works. I am not going to go into any sophisticated programming. I just want you to see what it looks like. I'm going to assume that you've already successfully downloaded and installed the software. So if I go down to my dock here, I find my PWGL icon, I double click, and I wait a few seconds, the splash screen comes up, things are loading, and you can see who created it and where, those lovely people at the Spalius Academy. And now we see two windows up on the screen. This one at the top, which is the PWGL window, and this one down here, which is PWGL output. Some of you may be familiar with Max MSP or PD, and Max also has an output window like this. And this is where results often are posted and error messages. So it's worth having that around if something doesn't seem to be behaving the way it should, or you think, hey, I told this to evaluate and I don't see an answer. That output window is the place to go. It's to look for information from the program to you. This upper window, the one that I'm shaking around now, this is the window where you'll be doing most of your work. PWGL, like Max MSP, PD, and Open Music, works in a paradigm that there are little boxes on the screen, each of which does some kind of task for you. And you can create pretty complex tasks by tying these boxes into one another. And generally, input to a box comes into its top. The box does something to the data that or commands that it receives. And then the output from that box goes out the bottom. And that's the general way that they work. Now, before we get into actually putting stuff on the screen, let's just take a little tour here. If you go up to the menus, you can see Hi, not much under here, File, Open, Close, Export, Register Libraries, Load Libraries. This loading libraries is going to be interesting if you continue with PWGL, because there are many libraries that don't ship with the software that extend what PWGL can do. We won't get into that today, but eventually you'll probably want to load extra libraries into your PWGL. Oh dear, how come I'm running on reserve battery power? I thought that I had this plugged in all night. Okay, I'm going to cut for a moment and take care of that. Anyway, I won't go through all the details on all of these menus, but you can see cut, copy, paste. I'll warn you that the undo in PWGL works sporadically at best, so don't count on it. Save your work often. If you make major changes, do a save as in order to preserve the previous version in case something goes awry. PWGL preferences are under here. We'll get into that another time. The stop, if things seem to be going crazy and you think you're in an infinite loop, command period should stop the current process. Patches here, help here, utilities. By the way, if you shut this PWGL window and want to start a new patch, you look here and there's no file menu anymore to say file new. So what one can do is just go back to utilities PWGL to open a new PWGL window. Okay, help, they have extensive help in here. I find that the tutorials aren't really great for absolute beginners, but there's definitely some very interesting material here to read through and check out. And the tutorials there are very many of them, so it's great. They're all actually working PWGL patches that you can edit and play with and put numbers in and try out and see what happens. For instance, here, if I change the number of cycles in this and reevaluate the patch, it does indeed change the number of cycles that are visible there. I'll take it back down to, say, 1, 2, reevaluate. It's kind of interesting. Whoops, what is this? There we go. Okay, so I won't go into these tutorials. They're there for you to explore on your own. and all the keyboard shortcuts are listed here if you're a keyboard shortcut type of person. Those are there as well. Alright, and EMP and 2D are other editing windows which we won't get into now. Alright, let's go back to the MP patch and say we want to do something in PWGL. We have this blank slate, and there are many, many objects that one can instantiate to do nifty things in PWGL. However, you don't see anything here except this completely blank sort of virtual paper. So the way that you access the menus of objects is to right-click if you have a multi-button mouse, or control-click on a Macintosh with or a laptop with no no mouse whatsoever, perhaps. And all of these menus come in here. You can just sort of scroll down and see there are many things in these menus. Some of them have sub-menus, and there's a lot here to kind of bite into. But let's just start with something pretty simple here. First of all, under Data, we can put things on the screen. And one of my favorites is Comment Box. And this is literally just that, to tell yourself or somebody else what the heck is going on. You just can type in it. So I'm going to instantiate a comment box here. It appears very sort of lowly looking, but we can move it around. Notice that the cursor changes shape when you're hovering around an object. For instance, this will let me extend the box this way. If I go down here, I can extend it this way. Here it's a pointing finger. That means if I double click, I can edit what's inside. And I could say PWGL tutorial, it's called a PWGL patch number 1. Cool stuff. Alright, so if I close this window again, that text is here. And when the cursor turns into an open hand, then I can move this box around. If I wanted to have 2 of these, I could hit Apple D to duplicate it and then alter them one at a time if I want. If I control click when I'm on an object, I get a menu of things I can do with that object. So here I might say Edit Input Box, and that will bring up the name of the box, X scale, Y scale. X scale and Y scale is a really easy way to change the font size, I found. So multiply them both by 2, and now we have much bigger text inside here, so that's kind of cute. And also, oops, I don't want to do that. So I can also control click here and say Edit Color, and so purple here, down. And now the whole box turns purple. I'll check the undo. I don't think this is undoable. Nope. I don't know if anything is really undoable, I have to say. But how about a more subtle color like that? There we go. Oh, I like that. Okay, so now this other one, notice when I want to select an object, I can't always, you can hover, and when you get that hand, you can then move the object around. Maybe a lingering Maximus P thing, but I tend to just select the whole box. And it gets a red outline, and then move them around. And of course, you can select multiple ones, and then grab one of them and move them around as a unit. Okay, so I'm going to push this comment over here for now. We might use that one again later. Let's do just 1 or 2 things, and then we'll end this tutorial. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to control click on an empty space. I'm going to get the menu which has everything in it, and I'm going to say I want to do some arithmetic. I'm going to add something. So G plus is going to let me add. Okay, and there are 2 locations, so I can add 2 numbers. Notice how the cursor becomes up and down arrows. That means I can just slide up and down around here to input a number. So it's very intuitive. However, if you are a little jittery or find this annoying, you can also control click here, say Edit Input Box, and put a value in there. So if I want 120 or 132, I could type it in here, and now it has 132. And let's add a simple number, 20. Okay, 21. So if I want to evaluate this operation, I just select the object and put V for evaluate. And now down here in my output window, you can see PWGL 153. So it has indeed evaluated that. If I evaluate it again, multiple times, I get a bunch of 153s coming out of that box. If I alter a number and evaluate again, then I get the new result, all happening down here. Okay, there are many of them because I hit it many times. Okay, so let's say I want to take the result of this and do something else to it. So I'm going to go back to arithmetic just to keep it simple and say divide. Okay, so I'm going to take the answer from this one and feed it into the left side of my divide, and I'll say I want to divide that by 2. Okay, so now if I evaluate just the top one, I get 134. If I evaluate the bottom one, it's going to go up the chain, get the answer to this one, and use it as the left operand in this operation, and take 134 and divide it by 2 and give us the answer, 67. Okay, so let's just keep the fun rolling here and do one more. So I'll say, what if we want to subtract from that? Okay, so I'll take the answer from that one and feed it into the subtract box. And let's say we want to subtract 10 from that. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 10. I hit V for evaluate, 57. Okay, this is kind of nice. And actually, I'll select all this and push it up a little bit. We're almost done. And now just to try to give it some kind of musical vibe, I'm going to go under Editors and go to Chord Editor, and then feed the output of this into the Chord Editor. And by the way, if you click on these little connection cables, you can control click and edit them. And my favorite, there are different kinds. My favorite is 5-point. You get this really handy-dandy little circle here that you can use as a means to pull and alter the positioning of your cables. I like to use the cables and look at that way. Also, notice in the chord object, you can make it bigger, first of all, and the interior contents get bigger also when you change it vertically. For the whole patch, actually, I can use my mouse pad like an iPad and stretch and shrink, zoom very easily. I think the scroll wheel on a multi-button mouse does this as well. And then within one of these objects with a graphical display, I can do the same thing, just within that object. That's kind of nifty. Okay. All right, so now if I evaluate this chord object, it will go up to this minus object, subtraction object, and say, what are we subtracting 10 from? It will say, oh, I need to do this division first. Where am I getting this operand? I have to go up and do this addition first. So then it will get to that top of the tree, do the addition, feed the answer to the division, feed the answer to the subtraction, feed the answer to the chord, and then if I hit evaluate, bloop, that note, 57, that number 57 is translated into MIDI 57, which is A3, the A below middle C. And I'm going to make this as loud as I can here. And if I hit spacebar, I can hear that note. I don't know if you can, it's pretty quiet, I think. But it's in there. And if I double click on the chord editor, there are various things I can do in here to the chord. Let's see if I control click here. All kinds of interesting things I can do. Change the accidental as appropriate, clef, insert expressions. Look at all this stuff in here. You know, mutes, phrasing, repetition, Schenker, set theory, marks. It's really fingering marks. So the interesting thing about PWGL is that it really has a serious music notation end in it, and all of this stuff conceivably could be algorithmically generated. So we're going to get into that later, but just know that that's all possible. So all kinds of very interesting stuff. So I might say, okay, I want my MIDI velocity, I'm going to change that and make it louder. So this wasn't very loud, I'm going to make it super loud. Okay, let's see if it changes. I'll go back out here, hit spacebar again. Ha! It sounds about the same to me. But you get the idea. Okay, I think that's a good place to stop for now. We've shown how we connect objects together in a kind of tree-like structure. And then we can evaluate answers as numbers. We can view them as musical information. And we'll jump off from here in future videos.